Hey, it's Nolan here. In today's video, I'm going to be trying to forge out these 3 paring knives. I've got kind of 3 different shapes here, and to do so, I've got all these different steels. I got ball bearings, old leaf spring pieces, and I also have some copper Damascus. I have 2 pieces of these just because if I mess one up, that way I can try again. To make it easier to keep track of which knife I'm working on while I'm forging, I labeled them knife 1, 2, and 3, and I'll put the text up on the screen which knife I'm working on at that time. I'm going to start out on the first knife. It's much shorter and has a much more ergonomical shape, and I start out by forging in the tip, and to do this, I break down the top corner and thin it down quite a bit. I don't have nearly enough length right now for the blade and the tang, so I'm just drawing it out right now so it's really long and skinny. After I've got enough length, I can start to forge the tip back upwards to get the curve I want. Then I'll use my spring tool to help isolate the material I'll need for my tang. This will help just make it a little bit easier and I won't have to grind away as much when I go to the grinder. Now that I've got a nice little transition from my blade to my handle, I'll go ahead and draw out the tang the rest of the way. I originally wanted this one to be a full tang knife, so I'm just flattening it out so I can get the shape I want, but you'll see what I do with that later on. The next thing I have to do is just cut off the little axis I have on the end because I didn't need it for anything and it was just looking weird. From there, I just have to clean up the profile a little bit and this one is finished. I was surprised how fast it went, and I think it was like 10 or so heats in total, which I thought was pretty good. The steel moved really easily, which helped a lot. Okay, as I was here forging, I realized that the knife I had picked out for number 1 is a lot longer. I have a lot more material. So this is going to become my number 2 now. So this is going to be the long knife. And then my knife for number 1, I have a lot less material. So that's going to be switched to knife number 1. And the profile is already perfect. So I'm going to start going ahead and normalizing this knife and finish forging the rest. Okay, so if that clip just confused any of y'all at all, essentially what I did is I was forging all 3 of the knives at the same time, but put all the footage in separate little bits for the video. So what happened was the knife that I just finished was originally going to fit the profile for the number 2 knife I sketched, but it didn't have enough material for it. So I changed it to fit the profile of knife number 1 and it all worked out great. So now that we're on knife number 2, what I just did was a similar process to the first one, except this time I drew out the tang first and then moved on to the blade. I aggressively forged down the corner to start creating my tip, and I had it over the anvil slightly so it created this little bump or nib off the other side, which isn't ideal, but it's no biggie. I just flipped it over and squished it back down to make it all smooth. Then it was back to the tang and getting it finalized to the length that I want. And after that, I could start working more on the blade profile. I've said it before, but this is one of my favorite parts, finally getting to see it start to look like a knife. And I just use light pressure, adjusting it where it needs to. I'm trying to get it really smooth right now for the next step that I'm about to do. I wanted to add a bit of texture to it by using a little ball peen hammer to just put tons of little round impressions all over. I think this gives it a really cool traditional look when it's all finished, and after that, I'm going to give it a quick scrub with a wire brush, and it's all done. Now onto the third knife. This one is going to be copper Damascus, and to start out I wanted to bend the tang up and then forge it into shape to give me more material for the blade, but that was a really bad idea. Okay, so I was just trying to open up the tang area again on the copper Damascus knife, and I started to get some little cracks in there, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to cut this off, and I'm going to try to use the spring tool to draw out the tang that way, see if that works. I did the same thing with both my billets. They both split apart on me. I don't know why I tried it twice. In hindsight, that's a pretty bad look for me. And after watching this back, I don't know what I was thinking. I should have ground out the cracks as I saw them come up and not try to forge weld it back together like I did. It looks like I was forging it really cold, but I didn't want to get it too hot and melt the copper out, so it was a tricky process. Now, I've done a few successful copper Damascus knives out of these same little pieces before, so I'm not sure what my issue today was. I was probably trying to just do everything fast, and I was rushing through the process because I had a limited time restraint on this one, but it's never a good idea to rush. All right, here's how the knives are doing after forging. While these were cooling down, I went ahead and took the copper Damascus piece that was like totally ruined, and I ground it out to the clean steel and got this tiny thing out of it. So we'll see. Maybe that'll be like a really, really little paring knife, but we might be able to salvage that. And the other two, they came out really good. I've been working a lot on forging the shape, and these two, I'm really happy with how they turned out. This one is a lot bigger than I initially intended to, but I think it'll be nice to have some size variance. So let's go ahead and heat treat these and then do the rest. I already did one normalization cycle on these knives, so I'm gonna do 2 more, and after that, I'll go ahead and quench them. It's starting to get dark out, so these knives are actually a lot cooler than they look. The exposure on my phone is just making the knives look really bright. So don't worry, I'm not gonna quench my knives like yellow hot. It's actually around the normal temperature. I let all knives normalize 3 times, so now it's time to go in for the quench. Okay, so remember how I said I was trying to do a full tang knife earlier? Well, I also messed that up. I forgot to drill the holes for the pins pre-heat treatment, and I can't drill through hardened steel, so I decided just to make it a hidden tang knife to match the rest of the knives. All right, after the quench, I went ahead and tempered them at 400 degrees for 2 hours, and here's how they're looking now. I'm gonna go ahead and start grinding the bevels. I'm using a brand new 36 grit belt here to roughen all my bevels. Having a nice sharp belt has really helped me get nice even bevels, and it shaves so much time off the process, which I guess would be a good time to say why I'm trying to get these knives done in 24 hours. I've got a craft fair coming up in 2 days, and I wanted to have a little more stock to put out on my table, and you have to be there a day earlier to set up your table and all your stuff, and that day is tomorrow. So I'm really racing against the clock here to get them all done, and I'm starting to get worried that I won't make it on time because I keep making silly little mistakes that I don't usually do. I got the bevels all ground to 400 grit on the belt grinder, and here's how they're looking now. The next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna hit them on the buffing wheel real quick. I think they're looking really nice. It's really cool how you can see the copper through the steel. And when I etch this, all this shiny steel, it'll turn into Damascus steel. So I'm really excited to see that. Here's how the finish is looking on these knives. It's got a really nice mirror polish on this one and also this big one. But on the smaller one, I did a sort of stone wash finish just to give it a little variant, and I think it looks pretty nice. So next thing to do is the handles. Real quick though, I do want to do a little test etch on the Damascus one just to see what it looks like and make sure I got the hardened steel core at the edge of my blade. You can see that pattern starting to come out a little bit right in here. Here's the different kind of handle materials I'm going to be using. I'm going to be using some Bolivian rosewood, some mystery wood with purple heart that I glued together, and then some just regular walnut. My process for drilling out the holes is super simple, so if you have any suggestions of what I can do differently, let me know. But basically, I just trace out the tang, and then I find the middle, which got that one first try. And now I know right where I need to drill through. Now I can just go ahead and drill the holes. Now that I got the holes drilled, I'm going to take some files and I'm just going to slowly carve out the slot so that the tang can fit perfectly in. This is going to take a while because I don't have any files the right size. This file is too small or too big. So I'm just going to really slowly do it. All right, after literally like forever, I finally got all 3 knives fit up with their handles, and I made little spacers for them. No gaps on any of them. Took forever, but it was totally worth it. So now I'm gonna go ahead and glue these up, and then I'll see y'all tomorrow. All right, it's now the next day. All the knives were glued up. They all went well. They came out straight. Usually I have trouble with hidden tang knives. Like sometimes they'll like end up like off to the side a little bit, but all these turned out good. So start grinding them on the belt sander. For shaping the wood, I use a brand new 60 grit belt. So it's a little less aggressive than what I'd use for metal, and I make sure it's a brand new one or slightly used so it doesn't burn the wood. As far as shaping the handles goes, I think everyone has a kind of different process for it. I like to grind in the handle profile first, and then once that is finished, if I'm doing a rounded handle, I'll knock in all the corners to an equal size and then go ahead and round everything over. So I get a more uniform shape. My process is the same on the first 2 knives. I just go back and forth from platen to the round wheel until I get everything smooth and round. And then the last one I do it a little bit different because I'm going to be grinding in facets for an octagonal cross section. All right, after shaping these knives in the grinder, I'm gonna go ahead and start hand sanding them. And after that, I'll oil them and sharpen them, and they'll be done. When hand sanding round handles like this one, I'll use the shoe shine method, and I'll put some duct tape on the back of the sandpaper so it makes it much stronger, and that way it doesn't rip, and I can add lots of downward pressure, and it gives it a super smooth finish. Now on the handle with facets, I'll do all the sanding with something hard backing it so that I can keep the lines nice and crisp. All right, time to apply some finish to these knives. This is always one of my favorite parts, just watching the wood grain pop and everything start to come alive. This wood has some of the craziest grain I've ever seen, and I have no idea what it is. I was given it by a friend, so if you have any ideas what it could be, let me know down in the comments. This rosewood is absolutely beautiful. While the oil is still wet on these knives, I'm going to sand them with some 3000 grit sandpaper. The last grit I stopped was 2500 grit, so this will just help knock down any grains that were raised by the oil. Last but not least, we got this little walnut one. I think it turned out all right. Definitely not my favorite knife I've ever made, but it's not horrible. It turned out nice. Okay, I lied. That last knife with the walnut wood handle sucks. I'll be the first one to say it's definitely not up to my normal quality standard, and for that reason, I'm not going to be selling it at my craft fair. I'm just not proud of it. I got carried away with it at the grinder on the handle, and that's one of the reasons why having a good plan and design to stick to is really important. To sharpen these knives, I use my whetstones, starting at 1000 grit and working my way up to 12,000 grit. And then I stropped them all with some buffing compound and got them all hair shaving sharp. If you made it all the way to the end of the video, I really appreciate it, and I hope you enjoyed watching. I got all 3 knives finished in the time constraint I had set, but only 2 of the knives will be going with me to the show. So I sort of passed and sort of failed. Let me know what you think of them down in the comments, and God bless.